open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And glad to have you with us today here on Kentucky's Voice. I'm Jim Waters. This is the conservative, common-sense, Christian-based voice of the Commonwealth, Kentucky's Voice. No corporate spin here, no big tech censorship, just Kentucky truth. Unbridled, unapologetic, conservative, and we're glad to have you with us here today as we are here every day broadcasting live on 970 WGTK, Louisville's conservative news talk powerhouse, and streaming live on our major social media platforms. You can also catch this show on WBNA TV 21 later this afternoon at 12:34 and 7 p.m. Today. Kentucky's Voice is not just a single voice, it's a collective of voices, if you will, your voice and my voice and our voices together, and that's why we want to hear from you. And you can reach out to us in for a couple of different reasons. One is we want your support. If you support and believe in a conservative talk show like this, it's a listener-supported project. We want to hear from you. You can reach out to us on kyvoice.org and give there. You can make either a one-time or a recurring monthly gift. Right there, again, that's kyvoice.org. Or you can text us at 502-571-0970. Give us your opinions and thoughts as well as donating. We want to hear what you think about the topics we're covering, the guests we're interviewing, the opinions we're espousing here on Kentucky's Voice. And I want to hear what your thoughts are. If you have something on your conservative mind, let us know, 502-571-0970. Well, it's a big week in Louisville as Thunder over Louisville returns after being canceled last year due to historic flooding. You may remember hundreds of thousands of people are going to line up on both sides of the Ohio River this weekend, all for a day of action, of air show, of drones, and one of the largest annual fireworks displays anywhere in North America. And of course, the event is considered a kickoff for the signature event of Louisville, which is the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Derby Festival. It's actually the kickoff for the festival. But this year's theme, Thunder in the USA, will celebrate America's 250th birthday. It's going to be a spectacular show from what I've been told, and I've had some conversations with folks involved, and that air show, it's going to start in the afternoon. The air show is going to be amazing. It's going to have military jets, high-energy flyovers, and then it's going to be followed by a nighttime drone show and a massive fireworks finale at around 9:30. So everybody needs to show up at Dan's house in Indiana, right, Dan? And they can all go on the roof and watch the fireworks show. I've heard that you can actually get a better view on the Indiana side of the river than you can on the Louisville side. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't done that. But anyhow, but it's just not only about the show itself. It's a major economic event for our community. After last year's cancellation due to flooding, businesses on both sides of the river throughout Kentuckiana are counting on a big comeback. Restaurants, breweries, vendors, they all say Thunder is often their biggest day of the year. I think about that. It's pretty amazing. Bigger even than the Derby because folks are out and about and they're eating out. And they're buying things that day all over the area. Some vendors said they lost $100,000 last year just in that single day when the event didn't happen. So this year, We're going to have it all. They're going all out. Food trucks, premium viewing spots. Many are already sold out. And I understand, again, that this fireworks show is really going to be something special, very patriotic as we celebrate not only our great country, but its 250th birthday. Well, the woke folks probably don't like it down deep, but they can't say anything about it because they'd be run out of town because the event is so popular and it's such an economic driver here. But it is a patriotic fireworks show, and I think it's great that for our community. So my recommendation is get to where you want to go early because traffic's going to be heavy. I think I hear music, Dan Brown. So coming up, we're going to talk about the legislature concluding the 2026 General Assembly session today and tomorrow. We'll talk about that more coming up on the next segment of Kentucky's Voice. Don't go away. Stay with us.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Well, we were talking in the last segment here on Kentucky's Voice about thunder over Louisville and the traffic. And speaking of traffic, don't say we didn't tell you. And don't act all surprised and all shook up when in less than 50 days now, there's going to be a major shutdown of Interstate 65 through the heart of this city of Louisville. And it's going to be a big shutdown starting June 1st. A 5-mile stretch of I-65 will completely close between the Watterson Expressway and downtown Louisville for almost 2 months. Did you get that? This is like one of the busiest north-south corridors in the nation, going through one of the nation's cities being shut down. It's going to be a mess. But this isn't just routine construction. The whole road has to be shut down because crews are replacing aging bridges from the 1950s. I want them to do that. Okay, I know it's going to be a pain, but I want bridges that are 75 years old to be rebuilt, to be new. And I'll go through a few days of being shut down, but you need to know it, and you need to start thinking about it because it will be here before you know it. The shutdown will run through August 1st. Detours are expected, major traffic impacts for the 100,000 plus drivers who use that stretch of road every day. Officials say doing a full closure now will actually speed things up, but even after it reopens, expect a lot of lane restrictions and construction lasting into next year, 2027. No need to panic about it. Just be thinking about it. If you drive through Louisville this summer, start planning now because this project is going to reshape traffic across the entire city. I think I'm going to whether I come to the TV station or the radio station from where I come from, which is south of the city, I'm going to come right up next to that shutdown, but it's not going to stop me, except there's going to be can you imagine the traffic that's going to be on the one-lane interchange or one-lane exit off of I-65 to Watterson where it gets down to one lane? Can you imagine how great that's going to be? He said sarcastically. So next, we want to talk about what's happening in one of the most watched political races in the country, which to anyone who understands how unique Kentucky politics are, it's happening right here in the Commonwealth between current 4th District Congressman Thomas Massie and his Trump-endorsed challenger Ed Galbraith. What are the polls telling us also about the race to fill the U.S. Senate seat, which will be decided this fall, as Kentucky's longtime senior senator and former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is not running for re-election? All right, first of all, let's take a look at the fourth district congressional race. And this district is so drawn so weirdly that it involves both northern Kentucky and a part of Louisville and over into current incumbent Thomas Massey's home district of Lewis County, which is really up in north and east of Lexington. But right now, of course, there's been a big fight going on, and this is really a proxy fight. This isn't so much between Massey and Gallrein as it is between Thomas Massey and President Trump, because Thomas Massey he voted against the One Big Beautiful Bill because he felt like it would greatly add to our nation's deficit. And that's against his principled stand, which he's had ever since he's been in Congress for several years now, several terms. And also he has pushed for release of the Epstein files and for continued prosecution. And I mean continuing to prosecute that whole case in terms of getting that information out. And he's been a thorn in President Trump's side. President Trump, on the other hand, is doing everything he can to get Thomas Massey out of Congress. So there's new polling out that shows that Thomas Massey is leading, and actually there are multiple polls out, and no poll show, well, I'll say this, the credible polls show him ahead, 52% in the big data poll to 48%. No poll has him behind. I'm making sure I'm right about that. But looking through all the polling, no polling I've seen has Thomas Massey behind or in danger of that. The closest one is the big data poll, which is 52 to 48. And that, which is, 52, 48. And then most polls have him at least 8 or 9 points ahead in double digit. It was double digits. And now Massey's leading 47-38, for example, in the Qantas Insights poll. 14% of voters are undecided. Now let's just take that for a moment. That Qantas Insights poll, which I believe is pretty indicative of what the race is doing. 47 to 38. That's a 9-point lead for Massey. 14% of voters are undecided in most polling. In that poll, that means that Ed Gallrein would have to get an overwhelming majority of the undecided voters in order to even have a chance to win this race. Now, some other observations. No question that Trump's endorsement makes this a tighter race than it would otherwise be. When Donald Trump comes to your district and he campaigns against you, that's going to have some impact, at least in the short term. The question is, will it be enough to get Massey out of Congress? I don't think so. I think this is Massey's race to lose, meaning that barring a major implosion by his campaign, some scandal that doesn't smell of made-up desperation by Ed Gallrein, or some desperate October surprise event, Thomas Massey is going to win this race, and close to, if not by double digits. That's because Trump's endorsement, while meaningful, is not always enough. One of the reasons was made clear by Gallrein when he spoke at President Trump's recent rally in northern Kentucky, where the president came explicitly to try and get Massey defeated. Clip 1.
Mr. President, welcome to Kentucky, and thanks for coming to the heartland. Mr. President, we stand with you. Fight, fight, fight!
Well, it's what you didn't hear there. And first of all, Gallrein, that was not very good job speaking. Okay, he's just not a very great, effective speaker. But we'll bypass that for a moment and just say that it's what you didn't hear that concerns me. What you haven't heard from Gallrein throughout this campaign. Voters rarely elect someone who only talks about who they're against or what they're against. Voters want to know not just who are you against, not just what do you oppose, but what are you for, who are you for. Now, we know that Gallrein is for Trump, of course, but little else. Where does he stand on the issues? And would he be independent-minded enough to take on this or any president would he be independent-minded enough to take on a Democratic president who does something that's not in the best interest of this country? As of right now, Congressman Thomas Massie has publicly stated that his Republican primary challenger, that is Gallrein, has backed out or refused to participate in at least 4 debates and candidate forums ahead of the primary, which is May 19th, the primary election in Kentucky's 4th District. There was a debate by the Republican Party of Kentucky's 4th District, the Commonwealth Policy Center, Northern Kentucky Young Republicans. Gallrein has refused to participate in any of those. Now, what's interesting about this, too, is that usually it is the incumbent that is not wanting to debate. Usually it's the incumbent who won't debate and the challenger who is demanding a debate from the incumbent. But here it's just exactly the opposite. The congressman, the incumbent, is asking for a debate and the challenger is refusing to do it. So Massie is accusing Gallrein of staying in the basement, campaigning from the basement. Who's that remind you of? Joe Biden. Joe Biden campaigned from the basement, if you will. So Gallrein has said his schedule is too busy, and he's given that as the reason for avoiding debates with Thomas Massie. And so it's not enough to get an endorsement. Now, Trump's endorsement, along with knowing where you stand on the issues, I think that's a different story. Knowing what you're for, what you're against, would you be independent-minded enough to take on a president who was wrong, or your leadership of your house, or anyone who you felt was wrong? All we've heard from Gallrein is Trump, 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 fight, 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 and that's just not enough, I think, to win this race. So, Dan, how much time do we have left in this segment? 2 minutes? Okay. So, poll released, as we said on Thursday, by Quantas Insights has Massie leading with 46 to 38. Now, another survey had a little bit closer big data poll found 52% of voters in the district leaning toward voting for Massie compared to 47% for Gallrein. By the way, about not debating, Massie said, "I'm comfortable debating because I know what I believe." He and his handlers don't want him in the debate because he doesn't really have any policy positions. He's promised just to do whatever the president and House Speaker Mike Johnson want, and he can't even be sure what that is on any given day. Now, to this point, not only is this one of the most watched GOP primaries in the nation, but it has monumental meaning for many members of Congress. As Congressman Massie himself notes, we've got just enough time. Play that clip, would you?
I've got 30, 40, 50 colleagues who are watching this race in Kentucky, and because they want to know if they could ever deviate, could they express an independent thought, or do they have to be automatons? And after May 19th, you know, if I were to lose, I think the whole entire rest of Congress would just fall in line and on the Republican side and never express an independent thought, ever.
So that's Congressman Massie, again, talking about the need for independent-minded congressmen. And that's what our founders intended, folks. They intended for congressmen to be independent, to represent their districts, the best interest of their districts, and to really debate and fight it out over these issues and make sure that what comes out of that discussion is actually the best policy for the American people. No one person, even as great as Donald Trump is, doesn't have all the answers. That's how it was set up. And we're going to have more on this issue coming back in our next segment right here on Kentucky's Voice.
to Kentucky's Voice Radio online at kyvoice.org.
502-571-0970. We want to hear from you today. What do you think about this congressional race between Thomas Massie and Ed Gallrein? We played a clip of Gallrein speaking at the Trump rally here, and basically it was just a rah-rah cheerleader. Get out. I mean, the only thing missing there was the pom-poms and the short skirts, thank goodness. But otherwise, it was just a big old cheerleading rally. And, hey, folks, I've been as big a supporter of President Trump's policies as anybody. But sometimes his techniques, his methodology, I'm not sure about, because you need more here than an endorsement. You need to know what you're for, what you're against. And see, that's the problem with a candidate like Gallrein going up against a candidate like Thomas Massie. Massie has spent his whole congressional career explaining his votes. In fact, he's had a lot of influence. Even as a freshman congressman, Thomas Massie had a lot of influence over the other congressmen, especially newer congressmen, members of Congress, who were elected, congressmen and women, of course, who would come in and wonder what he thought about bills, wonder what his office, what kind of calls they were getting about bills. That's influence, that's impact. And so Congressman Massie has had a tremendous amount of influence and presence in the Congress. He hasn't been just some quiet member of Congress who just went along with whatever the leadership said or whatever the president said. Now, that being said, remember that Donald Trump previously endorsed Thomas Massie, and Thomas Massie previously supported and endorsed President Trump here. So this is just a personal feud, I think, between the president and Congressman Massie has felt the need to stand up to it. But I was also interested in what Kentucky's soon-to-be senior senator, which is amazing that we're saying that because Rand Paul, for many years has been the junior senator in Kentucky. He will now be the senior senator since our current senior senator, Mitch McConnell, is not running for re-election. But what was Rand Paul's take on this? He really expanded this point about how Massie's election is not just about Massie and Gallrein and Trump, but it's about other members of Congress who are looking at this election and who Massie has had a lot of influence over in terms of his work on policy and work on legislation. And Rand Paul said this is really kind of a wider story than just that. Let's hear what Rand Paul had to say.
Representative Thomas Massie. Trump and his political allies are trying to oust him from Congress. They are now supporting a primary challenger. Do you think this is a real threat to Massie's chances at re-election?
I think what Thomas Massie represents is something bigger than him, bigger than me, and bigger than just one congressional seat. What he represents is an independent voice within the Republican Party, a voice that believes in the Constitution and a strict interpretation of the enumerated powers, who believes in balanced budgets, low taxes, and less foreign war. There's a big deal of overlap with President Trump on that. The irony is that both myself and Thomas Massie, in many ways, support the president's agenda significantly more than the people who have gotten close to him. The people who've gotten close to him who want regime change in Venezuela and want to send more advanced weaponry to Ukraine, those are the interventionists from the interventionist wing of the party, have never been the ones really closely allied. These are the people who have always opposed Donald Trump. Unfortunately, they've gotten on the inside now and have more impact. But I would say that Thomas Massie is going to win. I'm going to help him. I'm going to be with him every step of the way. I campaigned with him a month ago. We had big rallies and great deal of support. So people who think they can waltz into Kentucky with a bunch of New York money and buy a seat, they've got another thing coming.
Well, money is one thing, but the president putting his thumb on the scale is something else entirely. I mean, what he's doing with Massie, do you see that as a potential prelude to coming after you?
It's a caution. It's a warning sign. Oppose me or any of my policies and I'll come after you. And I don't think that's good for the Republican Party, nor do I think it's good for the country.
That's Senator Rand Paul, his take, and really some important points there about who's around the president, who's impacting the president. And that's always a huge issue because we saw that, we've seen that with many, many administrations. I think about Richard Nixon when I was young, and it was the people around him that really brought him down in many ways and really had a bad influence. So your advisors can have a great influence. They can have a negative influence. If you got a bunch of people in there who want to go to war, they want to be involved in the affairs of other countries, you're going to, those are the kinds of, that's how the president's going to trend. He's going to tend to trend in those directions. So we'll keep an eye on this race, see what happens. I think it's going to be interesting. Let me say this, the only poll that matters is on May 19th. And that's the day of the primary. That's the day when voters in the 4th Congressional District will decide, will Congressman Massey be the Republican nominee and likely remain in Congress, or will they make a change there? My prediction is he will stay, but it will be closer because of President Trump's involvement, no doubt about it. Now, let's take a look at the polling for both Democratic and Republican primary candidates seeking to fill Senator Mitch McConnell's seat, who, as we said earlier, is not running for re-election. Senator McConnell's been in the U.S. Senate for more than 40 years. We had 2 of the 3 candidates on last week that went to get the Republican nomination for his seat. We had, of course, Congressman Andy Barr, former Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron. I asked them both about term limits. We'll have Nate Morris on tomorrow, and I'm sure he'll comment about that. We'll do something on that in a future show. But right now, I want to look at what's happening in terms of polling, first of all. Right now, Andy Barr has the lead, but this is a pretty tight race. Andy Barr is averaging 26 to 28%. Daniel Cameron, 24 to 27%. Nate Morris, 15 to 17%. Undecided, and other, 33 to 34%. So this is a two-way race for sure, and I think we could say a three-way race. Even though Nate Morris's numbers have never been quite into the 20s. I mean, he's 15, 17. I think one poll had him 18, maybe closer to 20. But Andy Barr, Daniel Cameron are really the 2 leading candidates here. Nate Morris, depending on how he conducts the rest of his campaign, and all these guys are seeking Trump's endorsement. But let's just, first of all, I think there's a huge chunk of voters up for grabs. You've got 33 to 34% of the electorate are undecided. So right there, the undecideds right now are likely going to decide this race. So they really haven't probably been paying as close of attention as they are going to be from now on in the next 6 weeks before the primary election. Now, on the Democratic side, Charles Booker is seen as generally leading the field. Amy McGrath, a Democrat who's run before both these folks have run in the past, she is trailing Booker. McGrath has just lost. She doesn't win, and that's a problem. You also have Pamela Stevenson, and if you've seen her in action in the General Assembly, we should all be just very thankful that she's not a leading candidate here in this race and not really a serious candidate. It's going to be Booker and McGrath fighting it out. Now, in terms of the general election, who can win it? So Booker's the leading Democratic candidate. Andy Barr's the leading Republican candidate. In a head-to-head race, the general election snapshot polls have Barr winning that race over Booker, 39-38%. Cameron also wins 46 to 39, not quite as big of a margin, but still 7 points, which is significant. And Morris beats him in a very close race, 41 to 40%, very tight there. And as I said last week, we had Daniel Cameron, Andy Barr on the program. Andrew Cooperrider will interview Nate Morris tomorrow. Stay tuned on that race. More to come. Or other key U.S. House races. Kentucky has 6 congressional districts. 5 are currently held by Republicans, 1 by the Democrat, which is Morgan McGarvey right here in Louisville. He's a strong favorite to keep that seat. There's some GOP challengers. We had Maria Rodriguez on the program last week. Also Daniel Cobble, David Nichter, Donald Pay but that seat is certainly the Democrats to win or lose. The 6th congressional district seat, Republicans running Ralph Alvarado, Ryan Dotson. We had Alvarado on this program. Sherilyn Stevenson on the Democratic side, David Klobuchar. That will likely remain Republican unless something happens there and the Republicans implode. So probably going to keep 5 Republican seats in Kentucky, 1 Democratic seat. The 6th district's always tight. I think it'll stay Republican. It's been Barr's. Stay with us. More to come from the Kentucky General Assembly next.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Thanks for staying with us today here on Kentucky's Voice on this Tuesday edition. I'm Jim Waters, here with you each Tuesday, and glad to have you with us from 11 to noon each weekday here on Kentucky's Voice. We have different hosts. Dr. Lance Pearson on Mondays. Andrew Cooperrider holds down the show on Wednesday. Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, Debbie Robbins on Thursday and Friday. We hope you'll make this part of your day right here live on 970 WGTK. We're also streaming live across our social media platforms. And you can catch us on television 12:30, 4 and 7 on WBNA TV 21. That's 12:30, 4 and 7 p.m. Each weekday. And also you can tell us what you think about what's going on with the congressional races. We talked about that in our last segment. Also, the U.S. Senate primary with Republicans. Also, we talked a little bit about the Democratic race. Very familiar names there, Charles Booker, Amy McGrath. Booker had a pretty good run. He almost got the Democratic nomination the last time around over McGrath, and this time he is the leading favorite because McGrath went on and got really pummeled by Mitch McConnell in that general election. So she's got some baggage there politically. So it's now it's Booker's turn, it appears, to try to unseat a Republican in that seat. My prediction is it's not going to happen, but it'll certainly be interesting to see his race, and he'll campaign as a leftist, progressive for sure, and we'll see what he comes up with there. Now we're going to turn from federal races to state races, and we want to hear, by the way, what you have to think on these issues, on what your opinion is on these races. What do you think? Is Trump's endorsement going to be enough to push Gallrein past Massey, or what do you think about Gallrein refusing to debate Thomas Massey? What do you think about that? 502-571-0970. And Thomas Massey's district does come into Louisville. So if you are in his district, what do you think about the job he's done, and who are you going to vote for? Like to hear from you. 502-571-0970. Now let's turn our attention from the politics to the policy in Frankfort as we look at the Kentucky General Assembly and do an update there on what's been going on there. As we are concluding this program at noon today, the Kentucky General Assembly will gavel in at 12 o'clock in Frankfort, high noon, for the beginning of their final 2 days of sessions, and these sessions have been reserved to consider overriding vetoes that Governor Andy Beshear has issued on bills that the General Assembly passed. There have been a few overrides already, but the majority of that work will be done today and tomorrow in Frankfort. And this is the way the legislature works. Every year, the legislature builds 2 final days into the end of session, and specifically to consider vetoes. So how's that work? Well, after lawmakers pass bills, the governor can sign those bills. He can let them become law by not doing anything. And so if the governor, we use the sort of the analogy of sticks the bill in his pocket and doesn't do anything, he maybe pocket vetoes, we call it, but those bills become law after 10 days, or he can outright veto them. And when that happens, those vetoes go back to the General Assembly, where the legislature can override those, and they will vote on either upholding the governor's veto or overriding those and making the bill law anyway. Now, it's different in every state, or some states have differences in the way they do this. Some states you have to have a larger majority, a 2/3 majority, to override a veto. But in Kentucky, it's a simple majority. So you just have to have a simple majority in the House and Senate to override the governor's vetoes. And because the Republicans have a supermajority in the legislature, every bill that they really want to override, they can, and they do. Interesting, by the way, I've noticed that even with some bills that some Republicans may even vote against in their initial vote or not vote in the initial vote on a bill, they'll tend to go ahead and vote to override because they don't want to give the governor a political victory of not being able to override his veto. So they will go with the party even if they originally didn't vote for the bill. That does happen. So this is a great example of what our founders wanted in terms of a check and balance on power. So this is really the legislature having the leading voice in Frankfurt, and that's the way our founders intended it. I'm going to talk about this a little more in a minute, but if we get to this about this impeachment of this judge, but we've heard a lot about that we have co-equal branches of government. That's not true. We don't have co-equal branches of government. First of all, each branch of government has a different function, and each branch of government has a certain amount of power, but it's the legislature that has the lion's share of the power. Why do I say that? Because who is it that the founders gave the power of the purse? Whoever has the power of the purse has the majority of the power, and that is the legislature in the state and the Congress in Washington and the federal government. Now, the chief executive is the next powerful, and whoever holds the office of governor or president has the responsibility of executing the laws that are passed by the General Assembly. But then you have the judiciary, and that was intended by the founders to be the weakest arm of government, but to provide a check in terms of the constitutionality of laws and to issue decisions about particular bills and whether or not they are constitutional. Not to legislate, not to change policy, not to deal with bills just because they didn't like the outcome or they didn't agree with the politics or the policy. Their job is simply to interpret bills that are brought to them in terms of their constitutionality. So since 2019, Kentucky lawmakers have overridden well over 100 vetoes from Governor Andy Beshear. I think before it's over with, it'll be probably close to 200 bills that they have overridden. That is a tremendous number of bills. It's one of the most consistent override patterns in the country. There's nothing even close to that I know of in any other state. In 2021, the legislature overrode 27 vetoes in one sweep. In the 2022 and 2023 sessions, a dozen more overrides, including high-profile bills on abortion, transgender issues, executive powers. The legislature has consistently worked to limit the power of the executive, rightfully so. I don't care whether it's Republican or Democrat as a governor. They should not have the ability as one person, one politician, one partisan to override the legislature and have more power than the legislature. Our founders never intended that. The 2024 session, lawmakers overrode 24 plus vetoes. 25 session last year, they overrode 29 vetoes in a single day last year. The legislature did. And this year, they've already overridden 2 vetoes. Now, thank goodness for both the ability of the legislature to override this governor, because sometimes the best work that can be done for conservative constitutional values and principles is to stop bad bills, stop bad things from moving forward, or undo bad things that have already happened. So when the governor exceeded his executive authority during COVID, when he acted more like a king than a governor, the legislature has every right to come back and to rein him in and to stop that from happening in the future. Also, we can be thankful for a supermajority of Republicans in the legislature, since not all who claim to be Republicans actually are true Republicans. We've seen that in particular on education reform votes and school choice bills. But during this session, the Republicans did vote overwhelmingly to override Beshear's veto on House Bill 1, which is a school choice bill. It would opt Kentucky into a federal education tax credit school choice program. It would allow individuals and businesses to make donations of up to $1,700 for funding student scholarships. The funds can be used for tutoring, for private school tuition, for education-related expenses. This bill had strong Republican support. It passed and overrode largely along party lines, primarily because the Republicans who wouldn't vote for a state-sponsored school choice bill did not have the political risk in a federal bill that they would have had in the state bill, and why some of them voted against it. Bashir vetoed it because he argued the public dollar should stay in public education. A totally non-relevant argument, has nothing to do with this bill. This bill did not take money away from Kentucky's education system. In fact, it doesn't take money. It doesn't take any dollars from Kentuckians at all, other than those who would donate and receive a tax credit against their state tax liability because of it. And if you're going to say that would take money away from education, then you would have to say that every tax credit that is available to Kentuckians would do the same. And it's nonsense. It's an irrelevant argument. Bashir simply wanted to score political points with the teachers' unions and with those who will come out strongly for him, he hopes, when he runs for president. He doesn't care about the students of Kentucky, doesn't care about the families, doesn't care about our education system. I think he might even move away from here if he runs for president or becomes president. Maybe not, but who knows? Anyhow, another bill that was overridden, that was vetoed by the governor and overridden by the legislature, was House Bill 314, which restructures the oversight of the Kentucky Communications Network Authority. Now, this is the entity that was in charge of Kentucky Wired, which was a statewide high-speed internet project that was launched in 2015. The taxpayers were sold a bill of goods on this. They were told that this would help low-income Kentuckians get access to high-speed internet. It has never done that. It has never resulted in one low-income family in Kentucky, one low-income household ever getting access to high-speed internet. It has simply taken customers away from the private sector, away from private telecommunications companies who've had to threaten to take the state to court because of it. This project has cost over $1.5 billion to taxpayers in Kentucky. It's still not finished. And so what the legislature did was, because of these cost overruns, because of poor management by this project, they have removed the current leadership. They have reshaped the governing board of the Kentucky Communications Network Authority, and they have reduced or eliminated the governor's direct control appointments of this board. They have basically said, this is the legislature's prerogative. We are the ones who pay for this. We're the ones who are having to decide how we're going to make up these dollars and how we're going to fund this. And so we're going to have more say in the leadership and governorship of this agency. So this is the legislature and deciding to move control to different entities, take it away from the governor's office, and to try to protect taxpayers. The sponsor of this bill, Matt Lockett, rightfully called this project a huge debacle that needs fresh eyes. Bashir said it was an unconstitutional power grab. Really ironic coming from a guy who acted like a king during downtimes and shut down businesses in this country. More on the legislature, what they're going to consider, coming up next on Kentucky's Voice.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
So the Kentucky General Assembly back in session for their final 2 days of this year. It is a budget year, so there will be budget bill vetoes to consider, as the governor on a budget bill can line item vetoes. He can veto certain line items in the budget and accept the other parts of it. But the legislature also has the right to come back with a budget bill and also consider overriding those line item vetoes, just as it does any other bill. House Bill 6, another bill I wanted to point out, that this was bill sponsored and supported strongly by the Republican leadership. It changes how regulations are reviewed. It gives the legislatures more authority over executive branch regulations. It allows lawmakers to block or influence agency rules. Now, why does this matter? Because here it is, folks. The legislature in Kentucky is a part-time legislature. So that means they're not there year-round. They come for 30 days during odd-numbered years. They come for 60 days during even-numbered years. And the latest there in Frankfort is April 15th. The rest of the year, they're gone. And so it becomes incumbent upon agencies in the government, in the executive branch, who are supposed to execute the laws that the legislature passes. It becomes incumbent upon them to do it. Now, what happens is the agencies don't always work to carry out laws according to the intent of legislators. So legislators may intend one thing in a bill, but it gets implemented in a different way. And up to this point in time, legislators would have to come back and redo another bill, which takes a lot more time. It takes up a lot more effort. And instead, if they've already passed a bill, and the problem is that the regulations that are being used to implement the policy are not right, they should be able to come back and deal with that. Or if other regulations that aren't necessarily related to a particular bill, but they're being used that way, are being used or misused, if the regulatory process is being abused and it's harmful to Kentuckians and harmful to taxpayers, harmful to citizens, then this bill will allow lawmakers to block the rules or allow them to change or influence those rules so that they're changed. Beshear says it violates the separation of powers. But again, there are not co-equal branches of government. The legislature has the power, and they have the right to say to the governor that we're going to assume that and make sure that what our intentions were when we passed the bill are the way it's actually implemented. We've got House Bill 78, though, will certainly be considered for a veto override. Representative T.J. Roberts' bill that would provide legal protections for firearm manufacturers and sellers. What this bill does, it prevents lawsuits against gun makers and dealers in terms of liability for crimes committed by third parties. So you can't hold a gun manufacturer or a firearm seller liable for something that some crazy person does with something they happen to make or happen to sell. It blocks lawsuits holding companies liable for the criminal misuse of firearms. It aims to limit litigation targeting the gun industry. What this is a protection of our Second Amendment rights, because these are the kinds of lawsuits and the kinds of activity that the anti-Second Amendment lobby love to use to try to get their foot in the door, get the camel's nose under the tent. Beshear vetoed it, arguing victims should still be able to pursue legal action. No, they shouldn't. Not against somebody that's not responsible or should not be held responsible. House Bill 312, Savannah Maddox's bill that would allow 18 to 20-year-olds to qualify for a provisional concealed carry permit. The governor vetoed it over safety concerns. Lawmakers are expected to push it again. And here it is. If an 18-year-old can serve in the military, if a person's considered an adult, can serve in the military, can vote, they should be able to conceal carry. This is a consistency issue for legal adulthood rights. Other bills, House Bill 757, that's the budget bill. There are line item vetoes in there that have to do with infrastructure allocations and some agency funding, some other things like that. Senate Bill 77, is ibogaine research authorization. This would allow state-supported clinical research into ibogaine and targets treatment for addiction recovery, PTSD research. It directs funding towards specific clinical trials. Veto was issued on that. Certainly will be overridden. Now, another issue that came up is overhauling the Jefferson County Public Schools governance, the way their board, restructuring the way the board operates, the leadership of the district. This is an absolute disaster of a school district. These bills restructure the leadership. Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 4. They restructure the way that Jefferson County Public Schools are overseen. The governor vetoed them, but they remain in the legislative pipeline, and we'll see what happens with these. But I want to talk about this for just a moment to talk about the fact that that I'm not sure these bills are really going to have a big influence. But you need to know what they'll do. They rework the school board structure in Kentucky's largest district. It changes and alters the oversight model. It limits the executive agency's power. It really, what it does is it's set up to really give the superintendent of this district more power, and I'm just not sure that that's going to really matter. I'm not, because in many cases the superintendents have been a big part of the problem. All right, now go ahead and play that clip, Dan. I want to get that clip in there. This is go ahead and play that.
And new tonight, a longtime Republican Kentucky lawmaker from Louisville is facing questions about payments she received from her own nonprofit, Senator Julie Rocky Adams. And thanks for joining us here at 5. I'm Connie Leonard.
And I'm Doug Proffitt. We have new comments, and political reporter Isaiah Kim Martinez is also talking to the woman who filed an ethics complaint against the longtime state senator.
Why did you feel so motivated to go ahead and file an ethics complaint?
I feel like politics right now, from the local all the way to the national level, is either lacking transparency or there is a lot of transparency and just nothing is being done about it.
Brooke Benningfield is calling for an investigation of Kentucky Senator Julie Rocky Adams, a Republican from eastern Jefferson County, to look into whether she violated the state's legislative ethics code. Benningfield is the secretary of the Louisville Democratic Party and a constituent of Adams's district.
And I feel like this was an opportunity for me to hold my representative accountable.
She spoke exclusively with WHAS 11 after filing the ethics complaint this week, days after the Kentucky Lantern broke the story that Adams received more than $80,000 over 3 years from the nonprofit she leads. In a text, Adams, who's running for re-election this year, told me, "I have received no communication of a complaint."
Quality, innovation.
Years ago, the Louisville senator launched Kentucky Strong to support Republican women in elected office and to prepare others to run. In a statement sent to me about the payments, reflected in expense reports, Adams said, "Kentucky Strong has made a different choice in how we operate. We do not charge women to participate or receive support. For the first 7 years, I didn't take a dime. I was focused on getting the organization off the ground and making sure it could actually help people. Only in recent years, once it became sustainable, and as our financial reports reflect, have I received modest compensation for serving as executive director."
It still screams pay for play.
Today is Wednesday, April 1st, 2026.
Adams is the chair of the Senate Licensing and Occupations Committee, an important panel that has huge say over business regulations in Kentucky, including horse racing, sports wagering, and alcoholic beverage control. I asked the senator if she at any point requested an opinion from the Legislative Ethics Commission about accepting compensation from lobbyists or their employers. She responded, "All disclosures have been properly filed with legislative ethics." Do you believe she should be removed from her seat or penalized in any way?
I think that that is up to the ethics committee. I just feel like the constituents of District 36 do need some answers and some transparency.
The Legislative Ethics Commission couldn't speak on this specific case, but they did tell me when a complaint is filed, they review it and determine whether there is reason to move forward on a preliminary investigation. Isaiah Kim Martinez, WHAS 11, on your side.
So what's happened here is Senator Julie Rocky Adams is now facing an ethics complaint. The problem here is where she's getting the money for this nonprofit. Think about $50,000 from the Revolutionary Racing. That's Sandy's racing and gaming owner. $25,000 from Churchill Downs. $15,000 from Charter. $15,000 from LG&E and KU Energy. $5,000 from lobbyist David Whitehouse, and $5,000 from NOLA Education, represented by Whitehouse. So here you have a senator who's the chairman of a committee that oversees the regulations for these entities from which she's receiving contributions. It doesn't look good. Now, on the other hand, you've got this Democratic Party official, and what turns people off is the politics here. That if this was a Democrat, this Emily Benningfield, who nobody knows who she is, and I don't really care, but she wouldn't be calling for this investigation. And so this turns people off about politics, is that Senator Adams won't come out and take questions. She needs to be more open about this and answer questions about it. And that's just the bottom line. So I'm not impressed with our Legislative Ethics Commission. They pick and choose. They've been a very partisan organization in the past, and we can get into that sometime. But this off our text line before we go today. Thank you. I wonder how many people know we have a part-time legislature. This off our text line at 502-571-0970, 502-571-0970. Almost nobody in Kentucky will be voting for Ed Galrain. A lot will be voting against Massey, not because he did anything wrong, only because Trump told